The driver of a truck seen driving recklessly on KwaZulu Natal's R34 has been arrested. The incident came to light after a video was posted on social media. For more on this, we're joined by Gavin, the Chief Executive Officer of the Road Freight Association. Gavin, always good to see you. So while the investigation is underway and we're not clear what charges he might be facing, you have characterized this behavior as unacceptable.
Good afternoon, Dudu, and good afternoon to all your listeners. Yeah, this is something we just cannot accept or allow to become the norm on our roads in the country. Whether you drive a truck or a light motor vehicle is neither here nor there. But when you drive a vehicle of this size and this weight, and it's not easy to stop these sorts of vehicles, and we've seen enough examples of where vehicles like this have caused a fair amount of mayhem when they go over smaller vehicles. So this is not acceptable. As you noted, we don't know the exact causes for why this happened. We don't know whether he had a seizure in the cab. It's all conjecture. It's all supposition right now. But we cannot accept this, and we have to make sure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again. So we need to identify what caused this, and I think that's where the focus has to be right now.
You mentioned that we are not sure whether he had a seizure in the cab. Is this something that happens regularly to drivers?
No, that's not something that happens regularly. Drivers require a health check that is done on a regular basis. For example, when they get their driving license, they have to have a professional driver's permit, which requires a health check every 2 years. But that's only for the PRDP. Many transport operators require their drivers to do far more periodic health checks than that. They could be once a month, depending on what they transport. So if it's of a high explosive commodity like fuel or explosives in the mining industry, you could find that those transporters want health checks done far more frequently, or it could be quarterly or every 6 months. The bottom line is this, is what I'm saying is we don't know what happened. So if it was something like that, well, then that's terribly unfortunate. And then, of course, the question would be raised, has he done his medicals so that something like this could have been foreseen or picked up so he was stopped driving? We just don't know why he drove like he did.
As we're talking, we're playing those visuals and your heart drops to your stomach, right? But according to at least one statistic, trucks are involved in 62% of this country's road accidents. Is this number anywhere near accurate? If it is, it would be concerning, no?
Well, of course, Dudu, we only know what we know. So those incidents that are reported, because there are a number of incidents, and this is one of the big concerns we do have in terms of trying to identify where and why crashes occur or incidents occur. So not all of these incidents are reported. 62% is a large number. There are a large number of vehicles, and in our case, in terms of heavy motor vehicles, that are involved in incidents that don't involve another vehicle, commonly called leaving the road or single vehicle incidents. And that we know is because of fatigue or drivers falling asleep at the wheel. Now, that's something you could address. Theoretically, you can address it and you can put in programs to try and combat fatigue. But what happened here, for example, was this fatigue? And can we find from the records of the driver that the driver has been driving a number of trips non-stop without the prerequisite rests, and I'm only asking this as a possibility, or was it something of a far more severe medical nature? So it points to us making sure that the industry ensures that its drivers meet those minimum checks, those health checks, that the safety checks are done on the vehicles, that the rest periods are done. And then we can start to find out exactly what causes the majority or what lies behind something like this.
You speak of health and safety checks, but how much training is done for these drivers by not only members of your association, but those you know of that are not part of the association?
Well, again, Dudu, a difficult question to answer because it's obviously very much located or centered on the operator themselves. So if they don't meet those minimum requirements, we need to make sure that we could pick this up. So training is done in terms of legislation on a recurring basis, and for some of the training, depending again on the type of commodity that you drive, your training might be, and retraining might be prescribed for every 6 months, or it might only be prescribed for once a year. And again, if we don't have the systems in place to ensure that those who are not compliant are somehow held to be compliant or removed from the transport scenario, then we are going to struggle for quite some time.
So we are seeing here a truck driver that is driving recklessly, and like you pointed out, we do not know the circumstances that led him to do that. And then we have somebody that has captured this on camera who was trying to keep up with the so-called driver, also drawing some criticism, and others saying, well, look, if it wasn't for that person, this issue would not have been brought to light. I then do wonder, should we not be having dashboard cameras, you know, for the trucking industry, just so that maybe we can follow international best practice if others do this?
Dudu, you've touched on a bit of a large discussion point right now between the employers and the employees, as represented by organized labor and organized business. So a fair amount of operators do have onboard cameras that do assist with this sort of incident, or do assist in terms of what happens on an everyday basis. So you could then put in training or corrective training, if you'd like to use that term, preventative training. But unfortunately, there have been one or two instances where the privacy of the driver has been invaded, and that has also gone around the internet, on social media, and has been a terrible thing. So there needs to be a very, very, very clear delimitation in terms of what one can or should watch or should have access to, and anything that would impact on the personal time of the driver, or in any way impact on a person's own image, etc., should not be accessible. But it does help. It helps more in terms of preventative measures than it does in terms of, for want of a better word, disciplining the driver or holding the driver account for things that would then require the driver to lose their job. So it is something that is out in the industry and perhaps needs a little bit more intense investigation in terms of how these could be implemented without impacting on the rights of the driver.
On your point of discipline of the drivers, what about the companies that actually hire these drivers, right? So if you find a company being a repeat offender that hires shady drivers, what are the consequences?
Another good question. We've been struggling over the last 10 years at least to try and create some sort of reliable system between business and, for example, the departments that would either train, because remember, the licensing of drivers isn't done by business, it's done through the Department of Transport. And then a link with the department that would deal with disciplinary hearings and or would link with criminal cases, so there would be a judgment against the driver. Having access to that sort of information in a fairly free environment, once again, without impacting on the rights of individuals. So that's an important aspect that hasn't quite yet been resolved, where you could actually be quite sure of who you are employing, what sort of history they have. Then we already have an issue around non-compliant operators, is holding those employers to account for not ensuring that the basic security requirements or the basic safety requirements are met when they put drivers in charge of such vehicles or even other vehicles.
Gavin Kelly, good to get your perspective. He's the CEO of the Road Freight Association. Thank you.